But it all depends on how much you learn. And this is the interesting thing. It almost never feels like you're making progress until you cross the chasm of the next layer.
What I find fascinating, and when it comes to the holistic thing, is that when you focus on self-improvement, you end up like pretty good at not everything, but holistically better at most things because you can deploy these skills from a better operating system.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode number 1264, One Feeling We Are All After. We talked all about progress in that episode. Today, for episode number 1265, what's your number one non-negotiable? I was on a podcast. So I've really, when I'm coming up with topics for this podcast, I often reflect and say, okay, what have I learned from being on other podcasts? What were the questions? What were the themes? What were the curiosities? And how can I bring those to our audience? And somebody asked me the other day, they said, what has made the biggest difference for you if you could only pick one thing over the last, so 2017 to today, 6 years? What is the one thing? If you could only pick one thing, if you could only go to an island, or you could go to an island, you could only take the one thing, the most important thing, what would it be? And I was like, interesting. I said, for me, 30 minutes of learning every single day is a non-negotiable. And I really think, now here's the interesting thing. It's not always what you think it is. And this is interesting. This is an interesting part. It's not always 30 minutes from Audible. It's not always 30 minutes of a YouTube video. It's not always 30 minutes of a training. Sometimes it's the mandatory trainings we do once a month on the weekend, right? Sometimes I learn from that. It's like, okay, that's an hour. Other times it's when Alan and I on Mondays, we record our episodes. Before we record, we have like 4 hours of just deep talks, right? I'm learning constantly in there. Other times it's, I'll watch some sort of, I've been watching videos on, I think it's like the Human Anatomy Institute, and they literally have like cadavers and they show you, this is the muscle connections and this is why heavy exercise is better than or different than endurance. So I've been learning a lot about the physical body, and I learned a lot about physical therapy, and I learned a lot about different things. So for me, the number one non-negotiable is learning, but it's not necessarily what you think. It might not have anything to do with podcasting. It might not have anything to do with business. It might be me learning about, I don't know, the economy of Spain or something. Just because I've come across a video that I'm super interested in, and I'm like, let me see what this is about. For a long time,
an interesting one to land on.
I just threw that one out there. But for a long time, I was watching this YouTube channel called Company Man, and I learned about Keurig and how Keurig got to where they are. Interesting, that's cool, right? And then I would learn about, I'd learn about airplanes, or I'd learn about submarines or whatever it is. Now, I know that might not sound super useful, but I do believe that has created more confidence and more belief in me because I feel like I know more. And when you feel like you know more, you feel like you can add value in different ways, right? We were on a team call last night, and we were talking about what should we send out in our email, right? We don't really sell in our email. If you're subscribed to our email list, you'll very rarely see us sell anything. That's just not what we do. And we were saying, how can we make it more valuable? And I think I've learned over working with hundreds of clients at this point, like I have a different perspective than Alan. But that's because I've learned over, hundreds and hundreds of coaching calls based on just that alone. So that's my number one non-negotiable, but it's not necessarily in the way you might think. It doesn't have to be an audiobook. It doesn't have to be a YouTube video. When you go in with the intention of, I'm going to focus on learning as much as I can today, you get these weird opportunities to learn that you might have never gotten before because you're priming your mind. When you go into a restaurant, your experience is different. It's like, how do they possibly stay afloat when every time I go in here, there's only me? There's got to be something else going on. Maybe they do more deliveries. Okay, interesting. So, yeah, my goal in this episode, it doesn't have to be learning, right? Your number one non-negotiable doesn't have to be learning. But I just want to connect how important the non-negotiable is. And it's not just from the perspective of checking off the box. There's so many layers beneath that connect in so many different ways.
Have you ever gotten to the point in your day where you realize you haven't done it?
Yeah, of course.
And then you have to go like do something that you wouldn't have normally done?
All the time.
Can you give an example of that?
That's one of the reasons I started watching Shark Tank. My days were busy, and it was like, I'm going to R&R. My R&R, I'm going to learn. Even when I had COVID, I laid in bed and I watched, I think it's a channel called Cold Fusion on YouTube. And I told you, there was a company called Nikola that was making an electric semi-truck. Remember I told you that? And it ended up being this like giant fraud, and it was all kind of fake. Yeah. It was like an hour documentary. That's what I watched because I was like, oh, I'm going to learn about startups, and I'm going to learn about business, and I'm going to learn about ego, and I'm going to learn about, what happens when you have too much power. So yeah, that's something I never would have learned, or I never would have focused on.
It's interesting because two things. One, how do you differentiate between learning and just life? Because I would argue that every single day we're all kind of like learning all day, every day in some ways. But for you, like, where do you draw that line of like, what do you make count? Like, where do you draw the line of what counts?
I try
like for me, for exercise, it's like walking, any sort of movement of the body, but like yoga doesn't count. And again, this is my own frame. So for you, where do you draw the line?
It has to be some level of intentionality.
Right.
That's kind of how I think of it, as like, if I get
something
to the end
that you wouldn't normally do that you're doing to learn.
Yeah,
basically.
But not getting to the end of the day and saying like, well, I had that 10 minutes and then I had that other like 8 minutes, so that's 18. I'm sure I can like kind of combine 12 somewhere. I don't think that's real for me.
Right.
Because that's just kind of a cop out. So it has to be intentional. It has to be, I am intending on learning in this situation from reflection in the moment. I think it's just it's an intuitive thing. Like, I know. It just depends on the person.
Yeah, you always know if it's like, we're doing peak performance tracking and you hit the 1. I did this yesterday. I hit a 1 because I took something off my most important task list, and I have one MIT, most important task, as one of my PPT line items, one of my habits. And one of the, how sometimes when you don't do tasks for long enough, they just go away?
Yeah.
But you didn't do it. It just went away on its own. So I check it off my task list, and then I put it on my PPT. I'm like, that's a 1. And then right after that, I'm like, no, I didn't really do that. That just got done. Yep. It wasn't me and I didn't even initiate it getting done, because normally it's like, oh, okay, well, let's have this team member do this. Let's send a message to get that done, and then I'll check it off. Where in this case, it was just like, I didn't do anything. There was no intentionality whatsoever, and I still gave myself credit. And then I thought about it, and I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that. And so whatever your non-negotiable is, you have to draw those standards for yourself. And these are the things that no one can police for you. No one can guarantee, no one's with me with Tucker at 11 p.m. making sure that I did 30 full minutes of a walk. You know what I mean? I know that I did. As a matter of fact, sometimes with the timing, it's like Emilia and I will stop at the mailbox, and then we'll make sure we go to 33 minutes because we didn't know how long we sat at the mailbox. And that's the thing. You gotta set your own standard with this non-negotiable. This has to be your own thing that you do, because and you can still have public accountability. I've got a bunch of public accountability. I've got Jenna, Amy, and I are all doing the fitness thing every day, sending pictures to each other. We've got the NLU Fit pick going on social media, right? And we've got our streaks. I think streaks are powerful. If you've ever had Snapchat and you had a Snapchat streak with people, you want to keep the streak, so you always reach out. Leverage all of that. But when it comes to your non-negotiable, you have to draw the lines and the boundaries around what dictates a check mark. And I think that's important. The second question for you, Kev, is this. It's interesting because I remember at the beginning of our journey, you didn't really understand the value of learning. And now here you are.
Yeah.
Way more evolved and way older and way wiser, I would say. Definitely.
I appreciate that.
Of course, brother, of course. And you're like now preaching it. So what's that like?
Hi, my name's John Laurito, and I just wanted to give a big shout out to Kevin Palmieri. I had reached out to him. He had been referred to me when I had shared with a friend of mine some interest in doing a podcast, and he said, "You've got to use Kevin. He's fantastic. He's the best around. He'll get you started and off the ground and soaring high in no time." And take it from somebody who knows nothing about podcasting other than maybe saying a few things, but as far as behind the scenes, the startup, everything, I knew nothing. Kevin was phenomenal in terms of leading me through the whole process, and not just easy to work with, but really, really knows his stuff. A great combination between leading me through all the stuff I had no idea what I was doing, but also really listening to me and understanding what it was I was trying to accomplish and what my vision is. So whether you're looking for somebody to help you and get you started, or somebody, as I've done, where I'm putting it entirely in his hands because I've got total trust and confidence in him, and he is a true pro and easy to work with, any of those ends of the spectrum, you're going to have a lot of success and a lot of fun working with Kevin. Trust me. Thanks.
I had a moment the other day where I was thinking to myself, why? I feel if you listen to this podcast, you'll either laugh at this or I don't know. I don't know how you respond. I think I say some incredibly wise things. I also know I've said some incredibly dumb things that don't make any sense. So you never know what you're going to get. You just never know what you're going to get. But when I'm on other podcasts, 9 times out of 10, I feel like I'm saying very, very, very wise, thoughtful things. And I can tell oftentimes that the host is like, interesting. I don't know. I didn't expect that from you. And yeah, I've done a lot of speaking and the podcasting, but it's the more you learn, the more competent you ultimately become. It's just like, think of an athlete who they don't want to just be fast.
I don't know why.
Alan just had a giant twitch and punched himself in the face with a microphone.
Hammered my mic. Continue.
Think of an athlete who they could just run fast, right? They could focus all their energy on, I'm going to be the fastest person in the league, but they don't. They go and they get fast, and then they figure out, okay, how do I become the person with the best hands? I make sure I catch everything that's thrown to me. Okay, now I got to figure out how to block. Okay, let me learn how to block too. Okay, now let me figure out, let me learn the defense so I know what the people against me are doing. I just think it's one of those things where the more you know about everything, the more you can connect the dots. So that, I think, when you see people who are really crushing it at life, I believe, and like holistically crushing it at life, I think those are probably the people who have studied self-improvement the most. Because it's not, self-improvement is like, it's understanding yourself, but also understanding what success is, and then understanding what failures successful people had, but also understanding what successes that people had that you don't necessarily resonate with, and then how does that equate to you? I just think at the end of the day, you're the most important resource. Like, you are the asset. You are the most important thing to pour into, because then you can pour into things differently. It's that. You can't always measure, you're a vessel. You can't measure the water going in, always. But you can tell when you're able to pour more out in different buckets. That's the best way to explain it. Did it make any sense?
The vessel thing didn't, for me.
It didn't make any sense.
Go deeper.
I thought that was going to crush.
No, it's for me. I might have made sense.
I think of it. Think of it like, we have to go here in a couple minutes. We are out here jeffing. Okay. Every time you learn something, water gets poured into your pool, your giant pool, and at the beginning you're kind of empty. You don't really have that much.
Right.
Water is knowledge.
This is why I think young people struggle with self-worth, because
Makes sense.
They don't know anything,
Makes
they
sense.
think it's so interesting. Like, when you're in high school, you make no money because you don't know anything.
Well,
It's
that's
okay.
the interesting thing is, if you think the pool is full and then you try to add value somewhere you can't, nothing comes out. It's just
Right.
noise. It's just like, the filter, the hose is running, the hose is there, but the I don't know what it would be. The engine's not running. It's not pouring water into that conversation. So I just think of it as, every time you learn something, that's another bucket in the pool. But it's a bunch of different buckets. So this is like business, and this is sales, and this is relationships, and this is confidence, and self-belief, and self-worth, and branding, and marketing, and events, and emails, and whatever.
And here's the thing, Kev, the self-improvement is what deploys all those things.
Right. Right.
So I like the analogy Darren uses where the operating system. Okay, so think about your computer. Right now, StreamYard, we're using StreamYard. If you're on YouTube, you'll see that. StreamYard is a software program on the internet, but our computers have an operating system. The operating system is self-improvement in this analogy. StreamYard is marketing learning about marketing and branding. So it's almost like the self-improvement is the operating system, and if you have a really good operating system, you can deploy better marketing, you can deploy better branding, you can deploy better relationship communication, you can deploy better leadership skills. And that's one of the things that I find fascinating is that I know people that are better than me at so many different things. What I find fascinating, and when it comes to the holistic thing, is that when you focus on self-improvement, you end up like pretty good at not everything, but holistically better at most things because you can deploy these skills from a better operating system. And I hope that I just wanted to jump in because that was really interesting for you to say all those things, emails and marketing and branding and catch the ball and blocking and also running. It's like, okay, but the person, the self-improvement set point of the human being, like that's the value of learning, is that you now have more capabilities and you are more physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually fit to go and deploy value into the world. And then that feeds you back with money, fulfillment, growth, impact, love. You know, I often talk about, and this will be the last thing I say, I know we got to jump. I often talk about how people, if you're out there listening or watching this, you probably have some people in your life that have been very disrespectful to you. That tends to be what our demographic has dealt with, because Kevin and I have dealt with a lot of that as well. And these people that have been disrespectful, you've likely tolerated it in different ways. And when you pour into yourself and when you invest in yourself and when you start to feel valuable, because that's what happens when you pour into yourself. When you value yourself, you invest in yourself. And then when you invest in yourself, you feel more valuable. And then you stop sort of tolerating people who devalue you when you feel valuable. And so hopefully that's something that you are doing, whether it be learning or whether it be, for me, I was going to use exercise. For me, I remember being, a very quick story, I was in high school and I felt like all the athletes got all the significance and attention, even though I was the academic. And so now I feel way more valuable. My biggest self-esteem leverage point, for lack of better phrasing, is when I'm physically fit and when I'm exercising. So for me, that's my non-negotiable every day, because that's what makes me feel good about me. And now I won't tolerate being disrespected at the same level as I used to. And that's what makes everything else go around. So if you can find the one non-negotiable that is the biggest boost of your self-esteem and then go all in on it. So for you, Kev, you never felt smart enough. Learning makes perfect sense. Now you're smart and now you know it. And it's like, it just empowers everything else.
The last thing I'll excuse me. The last thing I'll say before we go. This is kind of the experience I've had with learning. In the very beginning, you have to. You don't have to, but this is what I've seen. In the very beginning, you leave conversations. If your self-improvement set point is too low and you don't think you can hang in a conversation, you leave. When your self-improvement set point raises and you become more competent and confident and you feel like you've learned more, you can hang in that conversation. So you're just on the wall, hanging on for dear life. That was my experience for a long time. After that, the next layer, I think, is you can actually understand what's being said. You understand. You can conceptualize, oh, interesting, that makes sense to me now. Then I think the next layer is you can actually add value to a conversation. Mm-hmm. And then I think the final layer is you can actually lead the conversation. And I think that's kind of how it goes. But it all depends on how much you learn. And this is the interesting thing. It almost never feels like you're making progress until you cross the chasm of the next layer.
Right.
And that's the weird part. I think I've crossed that recently where it's like, oh, okay. I am definitely the guide in podcasting now. Like now I really understand that. Interesting. Mm-hmm. That's why I wanted to do the episode, because I thought it would resonate.
Fire. And it depends on the arena. Some people are going to be, you're at a different stage, those stages you mentioned, you're at a different stage in each arena. And make sure you're choosing those proactively based on the future that you want would be the last thing I'd add.
Fire. All right, we got a meeting, so we got to go. Next Level Nation, as you know, April 1st, 2023, Worcester, Massachusetts, Next Level Live. We are super excited. We have a bunch of team members coming in, so all things are going to be amazing. We're going to be fishing, Alan, believe it or not. We rented an Airbnb for the team and ourselves.
I'm pumped. I got to go get my fishing poles.
Yeah, we're going to do it
last time you and I went.
We'll do a little. We're
You have
going
an
to do a
extra
little
pole?
fishing. No. Mine's broken. I got to fix mine. But you won't be fishing with us if you come to the event, but we will tell you about the fishing experience we had, and you're going to learn, you're going to meet other people, and you're going to learn about yourself. And again, that's kind of what this podcast is about, and that's definitely what this episode was about.
Okay. So I know we got to jump. So we have a book club every single Saturday. We're about to come up on 2 years. If you go to the website, nextleveluniverse.com, we're going to put the link in the show notes, please, to the book club page. So check out the book club page. You're going to see all the books that we've read. If you feel like book club is a good fit for you, reach out to myself. There's a button right there. I think there's actually a form that you can just fill out and join book club. But I want you to go to the landing page so you can see the types of books we're reading, because it really is. It's people who really are focused on self-improvement. And we're not going to read books that are outside of that realm. So right now we're reading Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Caroline Leaf. It's a heavy book, but it's a magnificent one. And if you want to improve yourself, it's Brandon, he's the director of book club. He says it might as well be free coaching, but from a group of people rather than just Alan. So that's the best way to describe it. If you want to dip your toe in, come check it out. And the link will be in the show notes.
Dip that toe. Next Level Nation, tomorrow for episode number 1266. Sometimes your purpose comes from your biggest problem. I had a very interesting breakthrough with a client recently that I am happy to share with you all. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.